Hello, 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 everybody on this fine Sunday. A little bit of a break from our typical Monday, but hey, we're here to please, and we've got everybody sans Ryan tonight, so I think we're gonna be just fine.
Hey,
Nobody disagrees, so that's a
I
good
was going
thing.
to say that just
no,
more
We're-
airtime for all
Ryan.
of us. That Ryan's not trying to steal it from us.
no.
You know, he typically likes to give his 19 cents worth of information.
I mean, 19, that's way better than 2 cents, I guess. So
Yeah,
is that a compliment or a backhanded?
He gives.
yeah, he gives and gives. Nobody asked for it, but he gives. All right, you guys ready to kick this thing off?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Bourbon Pursuit, the official podcast of Bourbon. I'm Kenny Coleman.
Fred Minnick here.
And we're going to be without the people's champ tonight, but that's fine. He's on his 15th vacation already this year. I think he's somewhere in Gulf Shores, Alabama. He likes to say this is not a vacation because he's with his daughter with a dance competition, but you know he's probably spending some money and having a good meal somewhere. So we're going to go ahead and chalk it up as we're
called
calling
a family trip. It doesn't count as vacation time.
I like you say that, Blake. You know, my dad actually has a term for this, and it's called an obligation.
Actually,
Yes.
I'm going to steal that.
Yeah.
Genius. Yeah.
I'll be on obligation next week. So
You want to think it's a vacation, but it's really not. Well, let's go ahead. Let's quickly do some introductions. We'll get this thing going. So, Blake, you already heard from him, so go ahead, do a quick announcement.
yeah, I have a bad time or a bad way of just interrupting every time you start to do an intro. But yes, I am Blake from Sealbox. Glad to be back here again, and this should be fun. I feel like we've touched on this topic a little bit, but I think we've got some more things at play where we can dive in a little deeper.
Yes, absolutely. And Mr. Sipping Corn himself.
Yeah. Brian was sipping corn, bourbon justice. I've been one of those Four Roses fanboys for a long, long time. So excited for this one.
I think we're all a little bit of Four Roses fan
we're all
boys
there.
inside
We're all
of
there.
us. That's
Yeah.
for sure. And Jordan.
Hey guys, this is Jordan from Breaking Bourbon. Super excited to be here.
Yes. Well, Brian kind of talked about it and hinted at it. And I think this is probably what's going to make this conversation, I don't know, a little, I want to say difficult, but it actually has like a lot more meaning into it than I think if we talk about a lot of other different bourbon companies out there. And that's because Four Roses has kind of been a darling child of a bourbon enthusiast that's out there. And so we're going to kind of talk about the introduction of Gallo taking over Four Roses and sort of what that means. We're also going to hit on some of the new releases that we've now been seeing start hitting officially, as well as the unofficial ones that are coming through the TTB and stuff like that. And we'll certainly touch on that one. But I think it would be not of our own style if we didn't just give a little bit of history of Four Roses, because I mean, obviously we have a historian around here, and you know we got to have a little bit of background into sort of the trading of hands, I guess you can say, over time, and how it just now ended up in the hands of Gallo. And that's where I'm just going to go ahead and hand the mic over to Fred, because this is what he does best.
Well, as you were asking that, I was like looking around. I was like, I missed the moment. I was going to have a Four Roses right there, ready to go, but I missed that mellow moment.
Nice.
So Four Roses is a really interesting company from a historic perspective. And look, there's all kinds of back and forth over where they got their name, how they used to be. Like the real story of Four Roses begins after Prohibition. So like they had been around for a little bit, but after Prohibition, they came out of the gate as one of the strongest, significant, most important bourbons out of Prohibition. And in fact, they were making a running for the Kentucky Derby in like 1935 to 1942 before Brown-Forman put a stamp on them. In fact, they had a real shot of becoming the official bourbon of the Kentucky Derby. World War II kind of changed their priorities, and Seagram's, their parent company, began to prioritize blends, and they prioritized a a little brand called Crown Royal in particular after World War II. And they thought it was a good idea to put all of their emphasis and focus on blends and make, the Seagram's was a fantastic company, but they were not a straight whiskey company. They did not look at the bourbon distilleries like they did the Canadian blends or even the American blends. And so they decided in the 1950s, even though Four Roses had magnificent success as a straight bourbon whiskey, they decided to take the bourbon, the Four Roses bourbon, off of the market in the United States and focus solely on foreign markets, especially the European markets. Four Roses became a darling in Spain, France, Italy. Now, these would be small plays at the end of the day, but they were not putting any emphasis on Four Roses, the bourbon. However, Four Roses continued as a brand, and it was a blended whiskey. Now, it would be a blended whiskey well into the 1990s, as many people at Four Roses who worked there back in the day were like, that wasn't our whiskey. That was made in like Maryland. It was a rot gut blend. And so when you talk to someone who's in their 70s about Four Roses being good, they'll kind of look at you like, oh, I don't know about that. That's not very good. So if you get a this is one of the true stories of like vintage, bourbon hunting. If you get a vintage bourbon of Four Roses, you better hope it's from an export, because anything that was here domestically would have stunk. So they, Jim Rutledge and Al Young, are working there in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and in the 90s they started. They had put their time in, and they started to, the Kentucky Bourbon Festival was underway, and there was all this enthusiasm for bourbon, and they started going to their parent company like, hey, can we please bottle something for our own employees to take home for something? There's all this interest in bourbon, people coming from all over the world for this bourbon festival. Can we have some bottles that we can sell and give away and all that? So they, in the 90s, they would eventually get like a single barrel situated in the domestic market. And, you'll find it has like a green label, it's kind of squatty looking. And they started being able to have Four Roses in the market because they fought for it. I mean, it was damn near like, imagine like a union asking for something that would make your parent company money and keep all of your people very, very happy. They did that, and so the parent company, Seagram's, was like, okay, we'll do this, but that's all we're doing. We're not going to go national with it. We're not going to put any focus on the bourbon. Well, then Edward Brofman Jr. decides that he wants to get out of the spirits business and get into the movie business. And so he completely divests. Seagram's, and that story's been told many times. It basically got split up between Pernod Ricard and what would become Diageo. And one of those little pieces, one of those little bitty pieces that got plucked by a Japanese company called Kirin. And that Japanese company acquired Four Roses. And they had the goal, the vision to bring Four Roses back onto the market, make a big splash. And man, they did a brilliant job. But they did a brilliant job because they had great whiskey and they had great people. I would put, if you want to ask me who the greatest Kentucky bourbon distiller was of the 21st century so far, I would put Jim Rutledge in that conversation. Jim is a fantastic. He has a most amazing palate, and the crazy thing is he smokes. Right, some of the best palates they're smokers. He had a great palate. He knew when the whiskey was ready. He knew when something turned in a barrel. He just had everything. And he also made the whiskey. He wasn't one of these fake master distillers. Like, he was running the plant. And he gave his heart and soul to that company. And the one knock that I would have on Kirin is that they didn't do the best job of like taking care of Jim or some of their other like elder employees that kind of help build that company. And they didn't put a lot into the sales force and marketing. They had like 15 sales reps in the entire country, for Four Roses. What carried that whiskey was always the whiskey. They put almost no money into marketing. They also had a new president from Japan come up from Kirin every 4 years. And so there would never be any consistency in the guidance. And the minute that a new CEO or president would get broken into the Kentucky market, they would go back to Japan. And so it was very hard to get into any kind of consistency with what their vision was. And outside of trade to trade marketing, they didn't do much. For the last 3 years, when we had our end of year discussion, I always said that Four Roses was going to get acquired. And
you finally got it, by the way.
I finally got it right. And the reason why is I knew that people have been kicking the tires of Four Roses, and I knew Kirin was interested in selling. So, I mean, I had inside information, but it wasn't like, everyone in Kentucky had that, right? So it wasn't like anything unique. But, they waited, and finally the market dropped, and Gallo is like, they're doing the stuff with Horse Soldier. They're trying to make more of a play in spirits. They're a predominantly wine company with a great wine history, but they do have a spirits portfolio. Nothing to the prestige of Four Roses, but they have one. Enter Gallo, who knows how to market. They probably overmarket, the quality that they have in some of their some of their products. But Four Roses is the only distillery that has went head to head with Buffalo Trace in all the competitions, in all the crazy allocated battles that liquor stores have. Four Roses is consistently the best distillery in Kentucky that goes head to head with Buffalo Trace. And so when Gallo comes in and buys it, that they are dropping a microphone. They are saying, we are here in Kentucky bourbon to play. We've got the best distillery to play with, and everyone was like, oh, I don't like that. What are they going to do? Sell us $2 Chuck, $2 bourbon? And I was like, no, man, I think this is a great fit. Right off the bat, I thought it was a great fit. And you've already seen some new limited edition products that they've come out. They've got a new experimental line series. The thing with Four Roses is they did such a great job of just selling their bourbon. We've always wondered what a rye would taste like from there. We always wondered what,
don't get ahead of yourself now.
I know, right? Don't
you're
get
asking
too far
a lot right there.
Yeah. But it's just, I think it's a great fit, and I'm excited to see what they do with it, because if anything, there will at least be a brand consistency, and there will at least be some very prominent marketing going toward Four Roses. Great brand. The one thing that I wish that they would do is find a way to bring Jim Rutledge home, because he was, I would say he was probably forced retired. I don't know if that's ever been, publicized, but 49 years, he was with that company, and it just never felt right to not see Jim Rutledge a part of that. Brent Elliott is amazing, probably top 3 master distiller out there. But I would love to find a way for Jim Rutledge to reunite with Four Roses.
Well, maybe he doesn't want to come out of retirement. Also keep that in mind, right? So some people are like, hey, I'm done working. But maybe there's a good idea for a collaboration in the future. But Fred, you had mentioned the marketing angle, and I think that's one thing that we should probably hit on first, is when Gallo comes in, and you had mentioned they're going to bring some pockets behind it. Kirin and Four Roses, for the longest time we'll call it the modern bourbon age, I think, where most of us really started getting into it. And that's pretty much what we've been accustomed to. You haven't seen a ton of Four Roses going hard in advertising or going hard after the back bar or anything like that. And maybe after the back bar, because the yellow label, what used to be called yellow label, was really geared towards that. But you think of a lot of the Four Roses advertisements that you do see, a lot of them are those old vintage ones. I mean, those vintage advertisements of Four Roses were ones that you see quite often when you're looking either at estate sales or on eBay, or even when you go and pick a barrel at Four Roses and you see them all lined and adorned on the walls. But I'll be interested to kind of see exactly what sort of money they're going to throw at the marketing behind this, because I know Blake, you had kind of mentioned on the show at one point that, how big Four Roses is. Like, I think you said like what they're like maybe in top 15 when we talk about distilleries across the US in regards of volume and everything like that, and what they're going to do to try and create more of a splash out in the market.
Yeah, I mean, I think Fred hit on it a little bit, but Four Roses, as it stands today, had 12 salespeople in the market, and you think about how big they are with 12 to call it 15 people in the market. Like, that's pretty wild and impressive. And to Fred's point, what Gallo does incredibly well is take brands and just really amplifies everything they do. They're incredible with, their market strategy, their distribution strategy, their overall branding, and they have a huge sales team and force behind them. So that's where I think this is a huge win. As we will see it roll out, I think as of now, it's a huge win. I think some of the finish stuff is a little interesting because we really don't see the big guys have experimental finishes. But I mean, even simple things like, why is the Al Young release not out there and it's a yearly thing? Like, why did we get rid of the single barrel limited release every year? And I understand some of the mechanics of the single barrel, but I think they could easily have 3 to 4 big LTO releases a year. And then that pushes back into they're hitting all their categories. They know who's going to be yellow label. Like, they know how to get it in bars. They know how to be on cocktail menus. They know how to push all those things from the Gallo aspect of the business. And then you've got this middle market, small batch and small batch select are still two of the bottles I suggest to anyone who's getting into bourbon. So they've got that great thing. I think there's room to expand on both of those, and Gallo is perfectly set up. And I won't steal any of the thunder from maybe later in the show when we argue about should they do a Mizunara.
Yeah, I was like, let's save that for a little bit later.
Yeah, but I mean, they're a massive company that I think was just being, kind of handcuffed a bit because Kirin didn't want to put a bunch of money into it. They didn't want to let him try anything new. I mean, the whole Jim Rutledge thing, I think, made a lot of bourbon enthusiasts upset because of how that went down. But maybe one of the luckiest things that happened to them is Brent Elliott is also just as good, and he's an incredible master distiller. He's great with the brand. He understands whiskey. And it's like, well, we may not have loved what happened to Jim, but Brent is fantastic as well. So they're still well positioned with all those things.
I think it's all good points. It's beyond desperately needed from a average consumer standpoint too, just the amount of money they need to put into marketing. So everyone watching this live stream, anyone listening to this podcast afterwards, all bourbon super fans, right? Big, probably Four Roses fans, or have definitely had their fair share of Four Roses. And if you think of all the other major Kentucky distilleries, Four Roses is beyond lacking in like the average consumer mindset. So what Sazerac did with Buffalo Trace, like Buffalo Trace is one of the hotter brands. Even if you don't drink bourbon, you know who Buffalo Trace is, right? Brown-Forman with the Woodford, and everyone associating Woodford with like a premium drinking experience when you're in like a large city, Manhattan, and cocktails and everything else. You have Beam and Wild Turkey, right? Those distilleries are just like Beam's bourbon to many folks. Wild Turkey is what their grandfather drank. All right, they know both brands, right? Like, people know all these brands by heart. And then you tell people, hey, what about Four Roses? I think you'd really like small batch or anything else. And they look at you and they're like, what's Four Roses? Never heard of them. Don't know what they are. Are they a big distillery? Everything else. Like, they are not top of mind at all for the average consumer. Yeah, all those other major distilleries, they all have at least one brand that is. And that is like a huge miss that Four Roses has been just not taking advantage of. And they do have a little bit of a hole to climb out of. I think you throw enough money at anything, you can quickly start solving that. But it's beyond needed. Even just like, take aside all the different variations they could be doing. Take aside they could be doing a rye, all the barrel finishes that are going to come. Just your core product, right? Just Four Roses small batch. Just that alone, there's no reason that should not be top of mind for so many people, like all the other brands. And I think it's about time.
Well, let's give them some
Yep.
free advice then. If we're going to try and figure out how does Gallo try to infiltrate Four Roses into the same conversation as Buffalo Trace, as everything that is top of mind? I mean, what are they going to do marketing wise? I mean, you've seen it from things like Green River, where they tried to go as low as you possibly go. You can get like a 1 liter Green River for like what is it, like $14.99 or something like that. I mean, do you think the way that they do this is they've just got to slash prices on that yellow label to the point where it starts becoming a household name?
I think you
Well,
could.
I was gonna say, I think it's already out there as a.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
every
it's
it's in so many rails for bars.
yeah. I don't think Yellow Label, these entry level brands that a lot of the bigger ones have that keeps the ship running. That's their Yellow Label, but I think where Gallo comes in with how good they are in marketing is, within the next couple months, let's change the name of Small Batch Select. If Kenny, if you want me to give them free advice, I mean, that's one of the worst names. You've already got Small Batch, and then it's Small Batch Select, which I love. It's
Hey Brian,
I've
I've got the pitch for them.
All right,
Small
tell 'em.
batch select reserve.
Oh, that'll do it. All
Huh?
you need is the word reserve. That's right. But work on that name. I mean, it is one of the top $3 $50 bourbons out there. I mean, it is absolutely fantastic. The folks that Jordan's talking about who's never heard of Four Roses, if they would just spend their $50 on Small Batch Select, they'd be knocked out. So work on that name. They've only got 12 salespeople out there. That will increase. So I'm really interested to see if Gallo does what it needs to do here, because this is a brand. I mean, what other brand has deserved more hype, love, accolades, all those sorts of things than Four Roses? They just haven't got it, which to enthusiasts, that side of us that is like, well, it's more for me. I know to go get this. That's great and all, but I love him so much. I want to see him do well. I want to see him expand.
I mean, you could even just play off the name itself, right? Keep it really simple. All the major holidays, especially like Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, anything else. Everyone loves a dozen roses, but sometimes you just need 4, right? And throw that in like the Times, throw it in People
Genius.
magazine, anything you want like that. And I swear to God, you would start getting traction all over the place with that, right? It's been in my mind for so many years, and why they don't do it, I have no idea.
I want you all to think about this for a second. Kirin didn't do anything to the point where we were doing all the marketing for him. Like when I say we, I mean us on this show, the people in the chat. This was the Bourbon Geeks' darling. And once they became hot and became allocated, what did they do? They started stripping away barrel picks from people who brought them to the dance. People always got up in arms about Buffalo Trace and what the single barrel program was like with them. Well, Four Roses just straight took away barrel picks from Bourbon's Bistro. That was the first place doing barrel picks in town. They did stuff like that all over the country, and they did not care. And I think of all the marketing things that they didn't do, it's what they did do that Gallo has got to do a lot of repair on, because Four Roses damaged a lot of relationships. And, I'm hoping that it gets back to the old days. But, the trade built it. And then the minute that it hit the top of the bubble, they started peeling away from people who were kind of brought them to the dance. And Gallo's got some repair there to do.
Fred, a lot of that had to do with volume that they had and the bad contract they had with Diageo. I mean, they were having to feed the Bullet brand until they were able to cancel that. So, I mean, I remember early on, 2012 and 13, all the really great old barrels they'd pull out for picks. And then this time frame you're talking about, the ages were dropping. They were just low on inventory. and that really affected people's availability. I'm not disagreeing with you that they didn't allocate the same barrels to the folks who got them there, but I'm just saying they were having a lot of pressure, especially from Diageo.
Yeah, and that was like the worst kept secret in all of whiskey. I remember I was in there with a bunch of journalists in 2009, 10. I don't remember. It was early. And Jim Rutledge, they had us all there, and Jim Rutledge or someone put out a bullet sample bottle in the lab, left it out so we would all see it, and we were all like, "Oh, we can't wait to write about this." And the publicist was like, "Oh no, please don't write about this. No one's supposed to know." It's like, we all know. But I'll never forget that. I swear, I bet you anything that was Jim Rutledge. He was like, "Oh, we got a bunch of journalists here. Let's put out this bullet sample bottle here."
Really stir some shit up.
Well, I mean, even on that same thing, once they did get popular, and you think about how many barrel picks they're doing, take the lack of inventory and everything else, but just trying to keep up with such a small team. I'm sure internally they were mad about a lot of those things of, Bourbon Bistro doesn't get a barrel, so-and-so is not getting single barrels anymore. We're just giving single barrels worth. I'm sure a lot of those people internally were very upset about that. But at the same time, I just think they couldn't get up or couldn't keep up with what was going on. And I think that's a quick change. I mean, I can't imagine anyone who was frustrated that their single barrels got taken away or this or that, if Four Roses came back and said, "Look, we messed up. We're going to offer you 10 to 12 year, you pick your recipe, come whenever you want to come to the distillery and select," everybody would take them up on that offer. I feel like that's a pretty easy fix. And when you have the manpower to facilitate those things, I think we'll start seeing a lot of that start to crank out. My only other suggestion for them was just going to be they should sponsor the Bourbon Pursuit podcast, and they would get out to millions of listeners every month.
Golly, I couldn't think of a better idea. That's almost as good as Jordan's tagline for them right there. So we're just giving them all the great marketing
Well,
advice.
Kenny, I was
Give
going to
free
suggest
advice.
that they come up with the exclusive online retailer being Sealbox. I thought that might help them too.
Yeah, too. Might as well.
We got
That's
ideas
Next
for them.
best thing.
I know. And yeah, a lawyer you could put on retainer. There's so many great things that
There's
we
so
can
much
all
stuff.
we could all prove. And then, not to shy away from it, there's some people in the chat that also mentioned that now today, those single barrels that we all hold in high regard that we've all picked throughout the years, I mean, the prices crept up, $100, $120 for some of those bottles. And I think they used to be what, $69.99, $79.99, something like that. And so by doing that over the span of, I think they only did it in the span of like 2 to 3 years, they raised the prices, upwards of 30 to 40%. And when you do something like that, yeah, I mean, you're going to start shying away people from the market. But that was what they did when times were really good. And now we'll see if that's going to help reset or anything like that. But I haven't heard of anything different about the barrel pick program now that we are in this new bourbon era, if you will. And I don't know if you guys have picked anything lately or heard anything different either. No, everybody's just silent. Everybody's like, I got
No,
nothing.
steady as it goes so far on that front.
Yeah. that's
Which
what they say.
Matt Shack made a one point or made a good point that I had a point on, meant to say earlier. But also the interesting thing is just what Gallo's portfolio is with all their RTDs and everything else. I feel like they really do have a good position with the younger generation. So this gives them kind of that transition to, the 25 to 35s as they're starting to come into the bourbon drinking age, interested in buying other bottles. It gives them a very good ramp to bring that younger group that's drinking stuff already in their portfolio to bring them into Four Roses and be drinking that. I think that's another big advantage for them.
Yep.
Is there a Four Roses RTD? I mean, probably hit next week, right? If Gallo's on it.
We'll see if the TTB says anything about it.
Yeah.
Mm.
But yeah, that's absolutely coming. Absolutely.
100%.
Well, I would say that's the thing that makes me nervous, right? So where I have been very critical of Kirin in this entire conversation. The one thing I respect what they did was they kept it as a bourbon and they kept it true to bourbon. And we've already seen the delineation from that, right? So we're already seeing some finishes that kind of get away from the traditional side of things. So I hope we don't see flavored whiskeys. I hope we don't see RTDs with the Four Roses label on it. I am a purist. I'd love to see things stay pure to the label that it is. Like if they want to create those products, I would just be hopeful that they would do it under a different name. Like maybe call it the Paul Jones RTD. I don't know.
There you go.
Something that's within the brand history, but not the brand itself.
Well, let's hit on the finishes here just a second. I got one more to kind of run by it in regards of like, what do we think that Gallo could do? Not only just from that perspective, let's kind of break it back to the core. Do you think that with their 10 different types of recipes that they do, the yeast strains, the mash bills, all that, do you think that they're going to mess with that? Do you think they're going to say like, hey, we need to streamline this. We need to go ahead and we're going to start narrowing this down. Do you think they're going to mess with anything in the operations? Do you think they're going to leave it alone, or is it just too early to tell?
My prediction on this, I don't think they mess with it, but I don't think they put it out in the forefront so much, right? I think they like pare back on advertising to that. Nice little thing for bourbon super fans, but in terms of like talking about the history, the story, stuff like that, it's just too complicated sometimes. So they just start paring that back, and you don't really see that being mentioned as much. Still there, but just not being talked about.
Well, I absolutely think that the people who I think the acquisition happened in part because of the talent in those fermentation rooms and the operate on the bottling line, because they've been trying to get Horse Soldier up and going, and they're going to have like all these consultants, people who can go over to this new facility to help out. Like, I mean, this was such if your plan is to make a play at American whiskey, Four Roses has so much talent there. And I actually would predict if they were smart, they would give the people there raises, and they would get some new people in there for them to train, because that is one of the best, absolute best production teams in all of whiskey. They are great.
All right, so we're pretty on board that we don't think anything's going to probably happen in liquid, and if it is, we've got years until we're actually going to see anything come out of that. I'm sure that that's more of a north-facing star thing that people have to try to figure out is what is the brand, what do they want to be in 5 to 10 years from now, and what kind of liquid do they have to create to be able to meet that certain goal. And it might mean paring back on some of those particular types of recipes, and then you have the ones that just go into the core, and that's what they push, and so on and so forth. And who knows, maybe that'll make those limited edition small batch releases even more special, because you don't see some of these mash bills and these recipes as much as you used to see before. All right, but that kind of leads us.
Quick question. This goes back a little bit, but it's on the marketing topic. Could Four Roses ever get the Kentucky Derby, where, I mean, the Run for the Roses, could they ever get that? I mean, we've talked about Brown-Forman a lot and what's going on over there. Is that something that could slip away from Woodford and Brown-Forman in general, where Gallo's like, look, we're going to go make a big splash? I mean, who knows when that contract runs until, but you want to talk about a big marketing splash. If we saw Four Roses as the official sponsor of the Kentucky Derby, that would be a cannonball.
Or even being the official bourbon. I wouldn't say, the Woodford Reserve being the official sponsor is kind of unprecedented. What could happen is that they would get the pouring rights and the sponsorship look of being the Derby. And Gallo's got the deep pockets, man. They could swing that, right? So they could make that happen. I don't know. It may be a better look for them to do like the Breeders' Cup. They did become the official bourbon of the Rose Bowl, which I think was probably a flop. But I don't see that being out of the possibility, Blake. And you're right, that would be a huge hit. And it also fits within their history because they did make a run for it. That World War II just kind of threw them off their game a little bit.
I mean, Twin Spires, I'm just going to probably throw it out there that they're probably not cheap. And so I did a quick search just doing like Gallo versus Brown Forman and market cap. And it says that regards of market cap, Brown Forman is around 13.6 billion, where it says Gallo, on the other hand, is only, they said they're privately held around 5 to 5.3 billion. So that could be a big differential in about how much marketing spend that you have. And yes, I'm sure that everybody's kind of seen a lot of the rumors flying around about Brown Forman and everything else is going on. And so having to cut out ties to Churchill, that would be a huge blow, not only to Churchill in the city, but it's also one of those sort of push and pull sort of things, because if you have a capital or a platinum sponsor, if you will, if somebody is as big as Brown Forman, you're probably going to try to cut some deals to keep them there, because it's going to cost more for them to probably go and find a new buyer to be able to take care of being that sort of top level sponsor and all the branding and all the stuff that they have around there, and cut them a deal instead of saying like, well, go ahead and cut you loose. And because if they're going to keep raising prices, who knows if Brown Forman's going to keep paying it anyway.
If we know one thing about Churchill Downs is they don't give two shits about loyalty. They don't care about the Brown Forman legacy being tied to the Kentucky Derby, or the fact that the Woodford Reserve Brown Forman relationship helped carry Churchill through some tough times. They don't give a shit, so they're going to go to the highest bidder. I mean, they'll turn the mint julep into a friggin' THC drink. If that means that they can get a little bit more greenback, that's what they're going to do.
Greenback. It all came together there too about it. All right, let's kind of shift the conversation and let's talk about the one that we've been kind of poking and prodding at a little bit around here is the potential for new experimentals. We've already kind of seen it hit. The first press release was experimental 001, which if that tells us anything, there might be 999 more of them to go. But the first one is this Japanese Mizunara finish. I've got my own thoughts on this. We talked a little bit on This Week in Bourbon, but guys, I kind of want to hear your thoughts on the idea of Four Roses going into the experimental finished whiskey, adding in different woods. Kind of what's your overall feeling on this one?
I like it only because I think that brands and companies should adapt to the times, or else they'll be left behind. So as much as I'm a purist and a romanticist, like the past is the past, you need to adopt to modern times. I think starting off with what they did, it's like the perfect nod. It's like saying goodbye to their former holdings and saying adios to Japan, and having them a send off. And it's going to be really exciting to see what they choose next for their second finish. I'm assuming it'll be a wine finish. Maybe not. They've had something in the works, I'm sure, but it would make sense as a tie into Gallo. And a lot of people don't like finished whiskeys, but consumers do. Like, they sell. And I think it'll be interesting to see what they can pull off. Like, what does a really well finished Four Roses product taste like? Maybe it's great. Maybe there's a barrel combination out there that's going to stop everyone in their tracks. It'll be interesting. I think it's great and exciting and innovative for the brand to do.
Jordan is one of my favorite, most favorite people in the history of the world, and I disagree with him.
This is a setup. This is a setup.
Yeah.
Let's hear it, Brian.
I mean, don't do it. I mean, stick to your core. You've done so well at the core. I mean, I'm gonna let the ready to drink stuff go. I mean, that's a no brainer. That's going to happen. Let that be the way you're meeting the new consumer where they are. Don't mess with the core that I've grown to love. This is just coming from a personal position of love for Four Roses. Don't finish things. Now, on the other hand, I'm going to a little bit disagree with myself. They never did a rye. They never let Jim do a rye. I'd love to see a rye come out from Four Roses. So maybe that's not core. Maybe I'm being inconsistent, but that's where I am. I mean, I hear what Jordan's saying about meeting the new consumer, but just do that in the RTDs. Leave the bourbon purist where we are.
Brian, I got to tell you, man, I love you, and we are always together on these things. Here's where I'm at with this. Like, we've talked about Four Roses competing against Buffalo Trace as being the guy, right? We've talked about this, and what has Buffalo Trace done? Like they are very selective with what they do and how they market it in terms of like what it means for the mainstay product. And that would be like Weller, right? Does Weller have finishes? Weller doesn't have finishes. Buffalo Trace, the actual brand Buffalo Trace, does it have finishes? You know, the experimental collection, that's very uniquely branded, right? And you could even say that's Buffalo Trace Distillery and not Buffalo Trace the brand. So the way they do things at Buffalo Trace is how I feel all the distilleries should do it. They should absolutely do the flavored whiskeys, do the RTDs, do the barrel finishes, but do them under unique names. Like if what is the new Four Roses, if they're going to have these experimental lines, then let's have an experimental line that is uniquely branded and not taking away from the Four Roses brand that is bourbon. And that is where, as Brian and I are, where we sit on the purist table, and Jordan, we are learning, is veering away a little bit. We see the entering of something that is not pure for what has been pure for 20-something years. But ironically, was a blend once upon a time. But, it just knocks it down a peg for us. Now, granted, people, there are brands that do it, but I don't think anyone does it better from a marketing perspective of like marketing their great bourbon and doing the things outside of the box. No one does it better than Buffalo Trace. Love them or hate them, they do a great job of it. And go ahead.
To be fair, Fred, they did label this the Four Roses Experimental Collection. So I mean, they are like, but no, seriously, it's the same thing. Like
the Experimenter series.
Like it is a new series. It's not just like Four Roses.
But so, like so they still have like their standard labeling. The Buffalo Trace Experimental Collection looks like it's like drawn up by some dude on his desk at an architecture firm. So that to me, there's massive separation. While maybe they're a name, it's not the same. I don't know. I think they got to be careful here. Like they can't veer too far off of what Four Roses has become. And I think also this was probably in the works before Kirin sold it, right?
Oh,
so
by
this
far, yeah.
This
the Mizunara is a pretty good tell, I would say, that it was in the works.
This has no, I would say this particular release probably has very little to do with Gallo. Maybe they changed the branding, maybe they changed the label, maybe they have a whole different line that they're thinking up. I don't know, but it just doesn't feel like something that was thought up in their rooms. The 21-year-old does, right? So that falls in line with a little bit more of what I feel like we might see from them, but I don't know. I just think that they are better off like marketing their quality and the great classic traditional bourbon that Four Roses is than breaking out into experimental lines. If they want to come out with an experimental line that's tied to the history of Four Roses, then call it the Paul Jones, or maybe Jim Rutledge gets a name, or maybe this is where Al Young's stuff, his name gets brought back into the fold. I just don't like using the name Four Roses on these experimental things.
Well,
oh, never mind. Go ahead, Blake.
I was going to say, I'll make this a 2-2 vote and then let Kenny be the deciding factor, because I actually like it. And Fred hit on it a little bit. Like this was obviously in the works before the Gallo deal was signed and sealed. And we would have been talking about this no matter what, because it's the first thing they've done in a while. It's the first finish they've done. It's now, is it the most exciting way to get a press release or some media punch? Maybe not for a lot of us enthusiasts, but it's 375s. It's called the experimental series. What's it, $50 a bottle? So people will buy it. It'll come in and sell and go through, and it gets them a splash. I mean, if it weren't for this Gallo deal, that would be the main story here of, oh man, Four Roses finally, experiments a little bit. I do think it's funny that they're playing kind of like these smaller NDP games. Like, this is what we have to do to try to make a splash, to get exciting, to try to get people interested in what we're doing with Sealbox or Pursuit or whoever else it is. And that's my only downside to this is I'm like, you're Four Roses. You don't have to do these types of things. Like I said earlier, just bring back Al Young, have this high age stated thing that people chase and go after, and you can call it the Lawrenceburg blend or whatever you want to call it. There's all these other ways I think they could have taken it, but in general, as a drinker, I'm excited. I was also a little disappointed that they're doing a chestnut finished bourbon, and I did not file my cola before them. But other than that, I think it'll be a fun series. We would have been talking about this when we probably wouldn't have been talking about Four Roses had the Gallo acquisition not happened. So it pushes them out there. I don't know if they've released a bottle count on these things, but yeah, I mean, I think it'll be a good release. I'm sure the Mizunara finish is excellent. It's only 6 years old. That's my only downside is like, it's a good one when they have the potential to have a great thing of like some big, massive drop that every bourbon nerd is chasing after. And this one, I feel like a lot of people will chase after it. But so I'm a fan. I like seeing people do these types of releases, especially when it's in that 375 bottle. And then I'll let Kenny cast his deciding vote after Fred says something.
Yeah,
Fred's gonna lobby for something real quick.
Brian, come off mute here for me.
Jordan, sounds like a fight. Get ready.
Before it goes to Kenny, Brian, what can we do to convince him? Because Kenny, he's new age. He's going to want to slap
this
AI
is unfair. Brian's an attorney. He can't be.
Just listen to that music. Listen to that music. Listen to that music he plays at the beginning. Is that traditionalist?
No, we're losing this battle. But
I know.
But what we do know about
Kenny's
Kenny,
our tiebreaker.
Kenny does.
We need Ryan on this show.
He does love a good sweet oak note, right? And
what has sweet oak note is Mizunara.
I'm gonna throw out one from a business.
We're toast, Brian.
To appeal to Kenny on this one. But you know what this allows Four Roses to do in this experimental series and these finished ones is they are one of the few major distilleries, and there's still others out there, but they're one of the few that doesn't have like a distillery club for their super fans. So hey, come visit Four Roses, get our quarter releases. What are you going to get? Like a single barrel nonstop every quarter? Like, okay, who cares? You need something different. Like this affords them that optionality as where bourbon clubs and distillery clubs, that's where we've talked about this a million times. Like this is where it's going. And this is what they need. They need something like this. So, all right, Kenny, you give us your thoughts.
All right. Well, I'll just go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off. I'm going to side with Brian and Fred on this one. I know. I know.
Kenny, they love EDM music. They're big Marshmallow fans.
All right, well, I'm leaning the way. No, but I mean, okay. So here's my rationale behind it. So Four Roses, yes, it's been the darling child forever, and I think what I loved about them is that they didn't fall into the trap that everybody else does. It's like, oh, everybody else is doing finishes. Like we got to go chase that. Like we got to go chase the fad and do what's there. They have a huge library with 10 different recipes, and that's bigger than any book at any other major distillery, right? I don't feel that they really stretched as how far as they could go with marketing really good, high quality whiskey with doing a 6-tier release. Here's a Warehouse M release. Here's a blend of blah, blah, blah. And by having all of those different variables, I think that you had almost like an endless yet series of combinations of something that you could create some hype around. Just look at what happened with the Father's Day release. Yeah, other than the secondary market plummeting on it, because that's what people do. They go and wait in line and try to flip it real quick. But they created a demand, and people were sitting there and they were waiting for it because it was just a good, high quality bourbon. Now, the thing that I'm also not a fan of on the experimental side, I get it. Like you have to experiment, and you have to go try other things. But like what we've seen already, like number 1 with Japanese Mizunara coming out, number 2 with honey, chestnut might be the only one that I guess you could really call it experimental. Like these are things that have been around forever. Like, you're not breaking new ground over here now. And
But
what I will
it's
say is,
to the
like, I feel like this
majority.
is gonna. Well, I think this is also going to be a very big foot in the mouth moment too, when myself, Fred, and Brian get to try this Mizunara one. We're like, it's whiskey of the year, guys. And so we're
Without
going
a
to have
doubt.
this sort of like this backwards moment. But I just looked at it and I just said, like, there's nothing here that, I mean, that's the thing about the whiskey world too, is that when somebody does something, there is usually a fast follow or a wave of things that happen behind it. And what they are doing, I just look at it, I'm like, you're like 3 to 4 years late to the party on some of these things. So I kind of look at it, I'm like, yeah, cool, go ahead and do that. But I'm not seeing anything that I'm like, oh, wow, like this is groundbreaking. This is something that has been around for already 5 years. So I'm not seeing anything that I'm over exuberant about, I guess you could say. And so hence the reason why I get on a business side or as a internal, like, we got to try something new and you got to start, throwing spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. But for this, I'm just like, okay, but we'll see what happens when we actually try it.
Yeah,
This is a great moment for
I mean-
for the whiskey brethren here, like the whiskey geeks, like
Yes.
Brian and I. Like, I don't even know what to say. Like, I got
Where do
goosebumps.
I follow our appeal on this decision?
with you,
Because
Blake.
I'd also like to reiterate the fact that, like, they are doing something different. And is it the great? Probably not. But is it a good step in the right direction? Maybe so. I get the point. They're trying to now play the game that NDPs can just actually beat them at, which is a downside. They can move fast. They can do different finishes. They can have new releases all the time. But I think it's still good to see. And somebody said in the chat, what's the difference with this and, the blends they used to do with the neutral grain spirit? And it's a very different thing when you're blending straight bourbon and finishing it, or adding in neutral grain spirit. That's a very different spirit.
Yeah,
Granted, they're
very
both what is it? DAS specialty spirits, or what's the term for TTB?
DSS.
Yeah,
DSS.
DSS. But I don't know. I still like to see it, and I think they did the branding side correctly by calling it experimental. It'll be in a different bottle size. It'll be at a different price point, and we can only hope, as Four Roses enthusiasts, that they continue to push all these other things that we think they could also be doing great at the same time.
Yeah, they'll be fine. I mean, I just think that they probably could have taken a playbook out of the Russells and seen what they've done, because Wild Turkey's done a great job of being able to create a lot of hype around their limited releases, and they're doing the warehouse game, they're doing the floor game, they're doing whatever, Eddie's special, Russell's batch, or whatever it is. Like, they did a good job. Now, like I said, I feel like this is still going to be a very big foot in the mouth moment, because we're all going to try and be like, damn, this is really good. But part of me is feeling like, well, like it was kind of like one of the last ones still holding on, where you didn't see something like this, and it is what it is. But and I think the only reason why we give
distillery
I think
only
by the way,
release?
I don't think the reason why we give Buffalo Trace a pass is because it's been around forever with that experimental collection, way before we were even really getting into this. 10, 12, 15 years. Actually, it had been 14, 15 years ago is probably when they started releasing those.
I was at the very first release party of it, and I got a barrel head with signed by all the writers who were there: Paul Packle, Lou Bryson, Chuck Cowdery, myself, and a couple other guys. One dude was with Playboy. I think he's dead now, but it was incredible. It was sorry, that was a bummer.
How old are you trying to make it sound, Fred?
Yeah,
It was a long time ago, but but it was. I remember when they were talking about this, and they were these. Chuck was like, yeah, and it was just glory days for me. I love those days.
Sounds like Chuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, guys, this has been good. I think we hit on a few different things, but obviously we'll be able to hear it from the horse's mouth, because I think we actually have Brent coming on the show here in September. We'll be recording with him and be able to
And I'm going to
talk
tell
a
him
bit
what
more
you
about
said.
this.
I'm going to tell.
Yeah. I guarantee you, he's listening to the show. He's going to hear this anyway on Thursday when it's released. So I get it. And
Yeah,
Brent
we're
can
all
really
very
talk about it.
complimentary of him,
Yes.
man.
Yeah,
Like we all love Mr. Elliott.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and like I said, it's not a slide at anything. It's not a slide at the brand. It's just like what we held in revere and regard, and we're kind of like, huh. But it's our feelings, and who cares, right?
You
Like
know,
they've
you
got
know
to do
something,
what's best for the
Kenny.
business.
People who work at these distilleries love it when we talk about them, good or bad, because it means they're staying relevant, and we're helping them keep their jobs. You know, and we're in a freaking hard time, and so like anytime we can talk about a distillery, I think that's good for the business, no matter what. So, and everyone in the chat, you know, thank you all for keeping bourbon going, because this is we're coming up on the end. What I hope is the end of some tough times, but man, this is this is a precious distillery, and Four Roses has to work. You know, it has to work.
It will. That I'm not.
Yep.
I'm not
Me
worried
either.
about that
I'm
whatsoever.
not worried about it
Yeah,
either.
it will.
No. Well, with that, make sure everybody goes out and get you a bottle of Small Batch Select just to go and help it. But honestly, Brian's right. It's probably one of their best offerings that they have out there. So if you're an enthusiast and maybe a new enthusiast, and you're like, oh, I need to add another bottle of Four Roses to my shelf, and those single barrel proof seem a little too pricey. Small Batch Select, that's where you're gonna go, and you can even leave it at a party, and you're not gonna feel bad about it.
And Ken, this is going to be the bottle that doesn't exist anymore. So clear the shelves, because they're going to change the name. It won't exist anymore. You will have the last bottle of Small Batch Select that anyone has ever seen.
Before it's Small Batch Select Reserve Batch.
Reserve,
two.
exactly. Batch strength.
Two. Single
Experimental
Rick
0,
House.
11, 21.
Toasted.
Can't forget that. All right, let's quickly do some sign-offs. Blake, go ahead.
Yeah, this was a fun one. I'm glad we had a little bit of tension in there and conflict. Hey, that came out on the downside of that final vote, but no, very, very fun episode for sure. And like I think we all said, we love Four Roses and love talking about them. And this just gave us another reason to spend an entire hour doing so. So go back, buy a bottle of Four Roses. I'm Blake from Sealbox, and we will see you next time.
Brian.
Yep, I'll echo that. Definitely go buy a bottle of Four Roses. I unfortunately opened an older one today. What I loved what Brent Elliott did is, you know, they dropped those single barrel limited editions, but he did a lot of great gift shop releases. So if anyone's got those, go open one of those. I mean, it's time to drink it. High time to drink it. That's what I'm doing tonight. Congratulations to Four Roses. Thanks for having me on again, guys. Brian was sipping corn and bourbon justice.
I'll make sure when Brent comes on, I'll ask him, be like, why'd you only do one release with your face on it? Did you guys run out of bottles? Like, you should just go ahead and re-up that every single year. All right, Jordan, go ahead.
Sure. Super fun conversation. This was a good debate. And if anyone from Gallo is listening and they need a new head of advertising, feel free to give me a call.
Very good. Very good.
This is Jordan from Breaking Bourbon.
You know how to get in hold of them. So there you
Uh-huh.
go. Go find them on breakingbourbon.com. Well, this was a fun one, Fred. Thank you so much for starting us off with a lot of the history and background, because that's what you do best. And it really helps set some context for this as well, too.
This drops on our birthday, right? On our country's birthday, right? This
It will be. It'll be this Thursday. So
yeah. So
happy
this
4th
is
of July, everybody.
Four Roses.
I don't know if you guys knew this,
brand
but this Thursday is July 2nd.
There you
It will
go.
not be our country's birthday.
It's a multi-day birthday celebration.
It is the
Creatively.
first roundtable before our country's birthday.
There you go. There you go.
So
I
starting
didn't
on
want-
Saturday,
I didn't
I
want
expect
Fred missing a
everybody-
meeting thinking he's showing up on Saturday somewhere.
Oh, that's happened many times. Let's not kid ourselves. That has happened many times. Hey, Kenny, remember that one time I showed up to a podcast 2 weeks early? Remember that?
Yeah, you have. And we're like, what are you doing here? Oh, the calendars are tough. Well, at least that tells you, at least on July 4th, you have a lot of 250th anniversary bottles to open up and finish, because that's the goal. You have to drink it all on that day. But with that, cheers, everybody. Have a good one, and we'll see you next time here on Bourbon Community Roundtable. Cheers.
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 Awesome. All right, guys. I know Jordan, you gotta
I gotta
bounce
hop
here in
off.
a second, so I'm
Yeah.
gonna go
Jordan's
ahead
got
and
to
end the
scoot.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream.
Congratulations, man.
Thanks. I really appreciate it,
Congratulations.
Brian. Thanks,
Hang
guys.
tight. I was just telling everybody that's a live viewer. Cheers. Thank you all for being here. I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream so we can go ahead and start the upload process, but we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.